Welcome to the session. I'm Rachel Blackburn. I'm on the corporate operations team at Oracle, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. This webinar is part of the weekly Oracle at Oracle webinar series, where we have the opportunity to hear from the executive team that reimagined Oracle. In this series of webinars, we share insights from our own journey to the cloud and demonstrate how we are using Oracle Cloud to power our business and enable exceptional customer and employee experiences. And we'll share our learnings along the way so others can do the same. Let's dive into today's topic. Over the course of the next 30 minutes or so, you'll hear how Oracle transformed our sales and service experience with Oracle CX. Now I'll hand it over to your webinar host for today, Paul Michael, to introduce himself and tell you a little bit about what he does at Oracle.
Great, thanks Rachel, and thanks everyone for joining today. Really appreciate everyone's interest in this topic, and it's an exciting issue or an exciting area that we want to really talk about here at Oracle. And for myself, I joined Oracle several years ago as part of the Sun acquisition, and I'm responsible for all of Oracle's sales systems and processes. So at Oracle, that means including the kind of the process definition and working with our our internal teams to deploy our best-in-class sales and service solutions for our sales teams, as well as for the pre-sales teams, which we call solution engineers. So as we go through this, it's important to kind of bring up the safe harbor that we do in all discussions. I'll let folks read through that at your leisure, and we're going to get into the topic here, which is all about reimagining how the sales and the pre-sales or solution engineering teams work together collaboratively to achieve success here at Oracle and ultimately for our customers. So I'll start with a bit of a problem statement. So as we embarked on this journey, we looked at a couple of kind of high-level areas of concern or kind of inefficiency we had here at Oracle. And to give you a little bit of backdrop on that, we have over 50,000 sales users, and that includes sales reps, their managers, the solution engineers that support them, and their managers. And it's a very diverse population, as you can imagine. And many of you are very familiar with Oracle. We have a very broad and deep solution set that we offer to the market, whether it be the Fusion SaaS services, the Tech Cloud offering, and the OCI components, and then some more traditional issues, or some traditional areas such as licenses of database and on-prem applications, all the way into hardware, and of course things like consulting and other kind of attached services that happen as part of a solution or product sale. And that's really important to kind of consider as we look at Oracle. And we don't just think about 50,000 sales users. We also realize that each of those sales users has potentially a particular perspective. They're working on a particular vertical market, or they're working on a particular product market. So as we look at a problem statement, I guess fortunately or unfortunately for us here internally and my team, is we try to make sure that as we look at these problems, we look at them holistically across not just all of our sales users, but all of our product lines of business, and throughout the kind of the hierarchy of the sales chain, including not just the reps, but also their managers, first line managers, all the way to executive management. In addition, we do over 1 million transactions a year. We operate in 92 countries currently, probably changed since the last time I updated this slide. And we run rate around $35 billion in annual managed revenue through our sales tools. So again, not just big, but also some complexity there. And as you might expect, like many of our customers, we also have a diverse ecosystem of not just internal users, but also external users, partners, and others. So that kind of gives you the background of Oracle sales. And I'll talk a little bit more now about how we look at the way that we solve problems at Oracle, or the way that we really drive value back into our internal teams here at Oracle. And again, it's around kind of 4 pillars. And if you've been to any of these Oracle at Oracle sessions, these pillars will be familiar to you. And it's really around, streamlining and simplifying a rep's experience or the user's experience. We'll be talking about sales reps a lot today, but certainly there are other users that that have the benefits of streamlining. We want to make sure that we empower the users as much as possible to give the experience autonomously, which means, can they do what they need to do in a way that automates the tasks that can be automated and adding value back to that user. And delighting the users around a positive experience that is both modern, that they like to use, that gives them the information that they need without, excessive click-throughs, et cetera. And then automate, which is not just about the user, but making sure that as we take the process of sales end to end, we're able to automate the elements that we can. And we'll talk more about that as we look at our architecture in some subsequent slides. So those are kind of the 4 pillars that we look at, and then we'll re-accentuate some of those pillars as we work through the slides here, or through the presentation. So let's get into the problem that we are going to talk about today. So today, oops, sorry, I went too far. So today, some of the issues that we've had with in the past between our selling teams and those that are supporting them, and again, the pre-sales teams, is all about how to engage them successfully. And this in the past has been somewhat of either tribal knowledge or kind of an ad hoc process. And what that means is that the sales rep is working with the customer, as they typically do, and they're trying to determine with that customer, what are some of their pain points? What are some of the opportunities that the sales rep might have to offer a set of Oracle solutions to solve a set of problems, to solve a critical pain point with the customer. And in so doing, they often need a technical resource, a pre-sales resource, or again, a solution engineer at Oracle to help support that process, whether it's kind of a discovery process where we're trying to understand those pain points in more detail, or whether it's actually starting to propose a solution that helps address those pain points long term. And again, there's a variety of selling motions that where we expect a sales rep and a technical person to be working together. Now, Oracle's a diverse environment, so not the best engineer may not be sitting next to the sales rep in their office, right? It might be somebody that is better positioned somewhere else. But what we found was the sales rep and the technology team would work together based on kind of this ad hoc or based on a relationship basis, which really made it difficult to properly resource and find the best resource to solve a particular problem or to get engaged with sales on something. At the same time, solution engineers were having a difficult time making sure that are they working on the right deals? Are they working on the deals that are most important to sales? Because again, if it's just an ad hoc relationship-based engagement model, we might find some preference where the solution engineer wants to work on a particular deal, but that might not be the best deal for them to be working on, whether it be their skills or whether it be, do we have the right capacity within the organization to support that deal when there might be a higher value deal or a deal that's further along in the pipeline that we would consider to be more important. And again, so from a sales perspective, they would get an inconsistent experience with that solution engineering team based on the kind of a lack of a collaboration and engagement system and process. And at the same time, the solution engineers and their managers were not sure if they were working on the right deals. And are they able to account for their investment as an organization back into the sales teams. So as we looked at this problem, we kind of thought about it in a couple different ways. And we kind of looked at how we wanted to model our business collectively. And again, this is globally. This wasn't just a particular group of a, of a particular, what we call a sales division or a line of business. We wanted to really understand how we wanted to improve the business overall. And we kind of decided on a model which we call solution engineering as a service, or SEAAS, and that, very similar to, software as a service or platform as a service, where we would want to offer the solution engineers as a service to sales that would be, kind of menu based or driven based on the need. And we agreed on kind of a set of services that were typically delivered by the solution engineer, and we kind of codified them in this global catalog of services. We ended up having 26 standard services that were common, again, across the globe and across our product lines, that would accommodate for a common understanding between the sales rep and the solution engineering team around what was being requested. And some of these services are things like a discovery service that would be used early in a sales cycle that would help engage with the customer to, again, define pain points, accentuate potential opportunities with that customer. Another standard service might be a standard demo, where we demonstrate a particular feature in a standard way, and then a tailored demo, which would be a more customized to the customer and potentially have multiple components in it that would have a service. So we have 26 of these services, and that was really important because it helps us make sure that we were simplifying the process and the system as we went through. The next stage was like, okay, if we have 26 standard services, how are we going to deploy them in a way where they're accessible to the teams that need to be? So we worked with our product development team, and we do this quite often. So I represent on the business side. I'm in the sales division, and we have close contacts with obviously other folks in Oracle. And as we started presenting this problem, it was clear to us that we could extend what we already had. And today at Oracle, and for the last at least 10 years, we've been using our own CRM system and Oracle Sales Cloud most recently to manage things like pipeline and opportunities and customers and leads. All of this kind of standard sales functions today are within the CX sales environment. So as we talked through these problem set, we realized that we had another very powerful corresponding component of the Fusion stack, which would be the CX service component. That would be a really good fit, because as we start defining these services, we would want a way to request the service, monitor the service, and follow it through its life cycle. So we really, and again, this is something that we do very almost maniacally at Oracle, is we organize around a single cloud system. And so it wasn't a very hard decision to make to extend Oracle Sales Cloud to include the service component. But it is something that we really wanted to have a thoughtful approach, because we could always do something if we didn't have the service component, maybe build something special. But we certainly don't try to do that. We want to make sure that we're using our technology as best we can to benefit all of our customers as well. So as we look through that, it is really going to be not just about enabling a new kind of module of the cloud offering, but also to make sure that it was completely seamless interface with sales. And this is really to enable the maximum collaboration between the teams, right? We didn't want to have a process where sales would make a request, kind of throw it over the wall approach, and then solution engineering would look on the other side of the wall and not really, kind of not engage. But in the combination of the services, a single system, and a seamless interface, we now have a very collaborative and fully connected system, so that it's a seamless collaboration between both the sales reps and their solution engineering counterparts. And one thing to note here is that one of the critical factors that we had in deploying these services, because the services are also considered the products and or solutions that we're helping to position with the customer, those services can be routed to a multiple different solution engineers. And that's a critical component because not every service goes to the same solution engineer for a given customer or a given sales rep. It actually needs to be very dynamic and also very flexible based on a variety of set of rules. And so we'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide and how we kind of solve some of that. So, this is our kind of a simplified view. It's really not a technical architecture, but a simplified architecture of how our processes kind of work together seamlessly. And it's worth mentioning that the addition of the service module into CX Cloud is relatively new, and we did it last year. But we already have over the years integrated other acquisitions into our complete end-to-end solution, which included Eloqua for campaigns and the demand gen process, and also CPQ for quoting and approvals. So those were already part of our rich and completely integrated environment. And so the addition of service is actually just a natural evolution to further augment and further improve the collaboration across all of Oracle. And when we look at these as systems, it's actually presented to the user as a single system, which is really powerful. So they don't have to be going into multiple systems all the time. And of course, we have mobile that we've been working with, product development. We're actually close to releasing a new mobile application, which is going to be very exciting, which is both sales and service oriented. And then finally, we use our OBIE platform. We call it SI, or Sales Intelligence, for all of our data analysis. And so this is a kind of a common thing that we see our customers do as well, obviously, that takes in all of these information so that we can do rich analytics and decision making based on the data to help drive the business forward, as well as to make changes if we see issues with processes and so forth. And finally, on the left, you can see this. We actually also implement Slack, not just for internal communications, but it's also integrated into our platform so that we have a seamless and best-in-class way to collaborate beyond these objects. So it's important to kind of consider that. And one thing that I'll mention here before we go to the next slide is when we look at connecting Sales Cloud and CX Service together, we use the Oracle Intelligent Advisor component to help drive the flexibility and the adaptability of getting the right service to the right engineer. We talked about that before. We have a diverse set of products and a diverse set of types of reps and types of solution engineers. And we use Intelligent Advisor to make sure that the request gets to the right resource that's available now that can deliver the needed service as quickly as possible. But it also allows us to load balance, so to speak. So if we have too many requests in one particular group, we can have a kind of a capacity override to move services to another team as necessary. So as we talking about collaboration, the other thing that we wanted to do, and this is kind of just some screenshots to help kind of give this a placeholder, give this some visual reference, is that what we're looking at here is our opportunity view within Oracle, which is somewhat unique to us in terms of how we want to manage the layout. And this is something that all customers can do. We've added this service request capability, which allows, again, the sales rep to make a request based on a service to get a service and to get someone assigned. And it also allows the sales rep to understand, have I got someone assigned to this? Is it on track? What's the status? Again, it's not meant to completely eliminate the person-to-person connectivity, but to augment that and allow collaboration. The other thing that we're doing is we're also adding, we use the assessment framework within the opportunity to help drive accountability to the progression of the deal. So that is a progression that is both commercially oriented as well as technically oriented, because we'll have a commercial aspect of a particular sales cycle that allows us to move through. We have depending on our line of business, we have a 5-stage methodology at Oracle. And we have a set of qualification criteria that we want to make sure that the sales and technical team are working collaboratively to ensure that those assessment criteria are complete and any risk areas identified to help ensure that these deals with the customers are going successfully, they're going on time, and they're ultimately drive forecast. That's really important because what we want to make sure is that we're collaborating between the sales rep and the solution engineer. Before we had this collaboration, we would get a lot of, kind of ad hoc discussions between the teams about what the status of the deal was, which was always somewhat, relationship based. And again, we've taken a bit of that relationship out so that it's standard, common, and repeatable. So as we deployed this solution, and again, we did this just last year about this time, we started receiving really some key benefits back to the organization. And I'd say that the benefits, there's quite a few here, but it's important to recognize that we do about 250,000 service requests per year. So that's a sales rep making a request to a technical resource. It does vary based on geography and based on product. But we were also able to reduce a set of tools. There were a number of tools that were used ad hoc. Some of the divisions had their own tools, some which were not necessarily very optimized. So we were able to reduce the tools that the users were using by over 80%. The key metric on the bottom left is even more critical, because what we were finding is, based on whether it be relationship based or whether it be on some of those old bespoke tools, we were really having a hard time getting an engineer assigned quickly to work with sales in an expedited fashion. So we've been able to reduce that engagement. And again, this is a tuning that we're able to make based on the system and the process by over 90%. So it was taking, in some cases, days, if not weeks, to get an engineer assigned and onto a deal. And now we're down to minutes, sometimes hours, depending on capacity, but it averages in the minutes. On the sales side, we've seen a couple of really major benefits. We're winning more often. We've been able to reduce the cycle time of the deals where we are engaged with a solution engineer significantly. And we're able to, and one of the things that solution engineers often do is they need to prep for customer calls by looking at the various information that we have about the customer. Do they have an install base of Oracle products? Do they have any usage if they're using one of our cloud products? And those types of researches have taken time before. As we deployed this solution, we also deployed clear visibility for the solution engineers to give them complete visibility to the customer and their environment. Do they have, for example, do they have Oracle database already? Have they been having issues with that? What's their experience been like? And that research time is really critical, and that research is important to make sure that we're positioned to have the most beneficial discussion with the customer. So we were able to reduce that significantly, and we did some time motion studies to actually do this by looking at all of the tools and all of the bespoke processes that were there before, and then again give the solution engineers a single place to do that and moving forward. So again, these benefits are just a kind of a snapshot of some of the high level benefits. We really, what we get all the time is a lot of accolades, not necessarily to my team, but to the whole process, where the sales reps really are encouraged by the fact that it's a very clear process. And especially for the newer reps that come on board, or reps that are new in a particular territory, having this engagement process has really been a game changer for them, because they don't have to develop those relationships when they come into Oracle. They don't have to, if they move their territory, say from a finance-based, set of customers to telecommunications, They don't have to get to know another team in order to be successful. They can use the same process. It's repeatable, and they can get to know their new engineers very quickly through this engagement process. So again, very powerful, that collaboration element between the sales and solution engineer pre-sales in order to not only just maximize sales, which is certainly important, but it also maximizes the efficiency between the teams, and ultimately back to our customers, because we're providing the best solutions to our customers, in the most expedient possible fashion possible. And again, typically what we'll see with deals based on their complexity is we'll see multiple engineers get involved through this process. It's not just one service request that's been made with one solution engineer. Typically, there's a team of solution engineers that are now working with a sales rep throughout the life cycle of the opportunity, and indeed beyond the opportunity now into, especially if it's a cloud customer, to make sure that the customer is completely successful using our cloud solutions once they're actually provisioned, and that's been a big benefit as well. So I'm going to go and talk a little bit about what what have we learned in this process, and then this is probably true of many projects here at Oracle. But we kind of have this mindset when we come in, and again, remember, the streamline and empower and automate capabilities. But we really want to make sure that we're designing a process first with the user in mind. We typically don't jump right into, oh, what's the system that we're going to use to solve a particular problem. We really want to make sure that we're simplifying, and in some cases, kind of ruthlessly simplifying the process that we want to use. Because if the process is complex, or worse, if the process is unknown, deploying a system will not help, right? Because just throwing a system into, without clear understanding of how that system is going to support the process. And again, we talked about the 26 standard services we use here at Oracle is critical to making sure that the system itself, the solution, is supporting that process and ultimately supporting the users. And then again, we never consider an initial deployment as the end state. In many cases, we consider the initial deployment the starting point. And so we spent several months getting ready to deploy the solution engineering as a service using the CX platform. We went live last June, but we continuously innovate. We look at the services. We look at the what we call the routing rules to make sure that the services are going in the right place. Are there things that we should be doing to optimize the experience? How can we best get the service requests to the right team? I'll tell you, sometimes when we first deployed this, we didn't have the right rules in place. But with the Oracle Intelligent Advisor, we were able to update those rules based on the data and actually improve the way that we routed. And we had some of our businesses were taking still a week to get an engineer, but it wasn't about the system. It was we had the rules wrong. And so, but that allows us to maximize and continuously innovate to improve it. And then again, I think everyone will recognize this. It's really important to do the right enablement and the right change management. No system, no process is going to have its maximum benefits without making sure that you have the right training in place, you have the right enablement and support network to support our users as they go through this journey. We don't just turn a process on and a system on and expect everyone to be adopting it completely and as efficiently as possible. Luckily, because we've designed the system with the process in mind, our enablement is really about making people aware. It's not so much about the training of this is how you do it. It's more about the awareness that we really kind of focus on for our users. So I'm going to move on to kind of our futures. So again, where we are today is we've deployed our CX service solution alongside sales and a combined single system that allows collaboration, that allows engagement and this automated routing of requests, acceptance and visibility of the services as they go through their life cycle. It also allows us to understand exactly how and who are getting involved in services. It also tells us, where are we being successful with our organization and where are we needing to do more work? And it could be because we don't have enough resources, or potentially we don't have the right skills of resources to meet the needs. So the system's not just about engagement now. As we get more information out of the system, we can tell where we have improvements to make within the organization. Again, skills and resources are a very common thing that our businesses look at to ensure that we have the right resources trained and available to work with sales. As we look at the upcoming expansion, and these are things that we're doing in the next couple of quarters, we're bringing in this kind of idea that, again, we talked a lot about collaboration. How do we collaborate between the sales rep and the solution engineer? But how do we make sure we bubble up that collaboration in an appropriate way to the management team? So for example, if you're on a forecast call with sales, it's really important, if there are risks associated to a particular forecasted deal, that we're very clear about what those risks are. In the past, we had a very clear understanding of what the commercial risks were. For example, we would look at, is there a quote available for that particular deal? Has the customer committed to Oracle as the committed partner? The other thing that we're adding now is the technical perspective, or the solution engineering perspective, which gives us technical insights to ensure that those forecasted deals are also matching our technical progression. Meaning, have we done a proof of concept? Have we fully agreed on the solution design? Do we have a clear technical bill of materials that is understandable to the customer? Does the customer agree to a consumption plan if it's a cloud business? So these are things that not only do we want to capture in the process, but we also want to bubble them up to the executive management team. So as they look at their book of business, they can understand what are the risks, and then ultimately, how do we mitigate those risks? Because it's not about blaming, it's really about making sure that if we do have a risk, how do we understand how to close that risk? What are the next steps? What are the next actions? So that's something that we're really encouraged about. There's a lot of excitement with our sales and solution engineering teams around the SE perspective. The second is knowledge management. And again, there's a knowledge management component. We're really excited about delivering knowledge as part of these services so that our solution engineers are reusing the best artifacts and the best content to develop their services and ultimately to develop the solutions that are presented to customers. That's something that, we kind of wanted to do that last year, but we wanted to kind of walk a little bit before we ran. So this is something we're, again, quite excited about, and something that we'll be using the core Oracle technology for. And the final one, which is pervasive across all of our sales and service platform, is a new feature called Workspace, which is available to us, and we'll be picking that up to actually ensure that both our solution engineers and our sales reps can be using a technology that is both fast, gets to the critical elements they need for opportunities, services, and accounts, and it's adaptive. It's customizable for them if they want to get a unique view for their particular persona. And it really is going to help us consolidate and simplify our tools. And again, that's one of the key tenets that we talked about earlier on, around really simplifying the user experience and making it designed around them rather than the experience driving the sales rep process. So I'm going to go to a couple quotes here. Again, this is some quotes from a sales rep, etc. We're seeing quite a bit of continued excitement for this. Everyone is not just excited about what we've done, but now that we have a standard platform for this engagement, they're excited about where we can take it. And again, getting to this single process designed around the 26 services on a single cloud solution that allows the automation of the process as well as the integrated experience between sales and service has been a game changer for Oracle. And we have the benefits and the numbers to prove it. And again, we're super excited about making it not just about that endpoint, but as a journey and improving and learning more about how we can take this collaboration to the next level. So with that, I'm going to stop the general presentation, and we'll turn it over to Rachel and myself to answer any questions that are out there.
Thanks, Paul. That was great. We'll move into the Q&A portion of the session. If you have any questions for Paul, please enter them in the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Paul, to start, I know we're seeing great results now, but how did we approach any change management that was associated with this project along the way?
Oh, that's a good question. And we kind of a little bit touched on that, Rachel, as we were talking about it. It's a good point, and it's a very common question that we get from customers because, as I said, it's not necessarily, deploying a process in a system is certainly difficult, but getting and ensuring that the users are adopting that process is critical. And, I think a couple of things that we do at Oracle, which are fairly common across all of our business units. Again, I'm in sales. We have my counterparts in human resources. We have my counterparts in finance, many of them have spoke on similar calls. And what we do is we empower a particular type of role at Oracle called the Global Process Owner, or GPO. And the GPO is actually ultimately responsible, not just for the kind of the solution design and the process that's being deployed, but ultimately how we want to approach change management and making sure that that change management approach is not just designed in a vacuum, but we work very closely with our business counterparts across the globe within our divisions to make sure that not only do they understand the change, but making sure that we have a full deployment plan. And the deployment plan will certainly include the things that you would typically include, things like email communications. We also use Slack to communicate, but we also use some other features like the Oracle Guided Learning Platform to accentuate these features back to users within the system. And again, that engagement really starts not when we're ready to deploy, but actually several months before we're ready to deploy, to make sure that our businesses are completely aware of and also supporting that. We have a fairly diverse operations team at Oracle. And as you might expect, based on the number of products and the number of users we have, it's really important to engage that operations team to help ensure that everyone is being successful, and that we can handle support questions. We have a very centralized support process at Oracle, which means if users have questions, they can get that question answered quickly, or if they have an issue that they can't resolve. Again, a single seamless process. So through communication, in-app deployment, training, and ongoing support, that's how typically we approach change management.
Great. And next question, you mentioned a 2x win rate number and the benefits. How did you measure that, and how did you go about attributing it to our new model?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Actually, there's, when you look at that number, it's like, wow, you win 2 times more. And so the way we did that is we wanted to measure, when we look at these projects, we want to make sure that we have measurements in place. Some of the times the measurements are operational, like how many service requests are we getting? But often it's more about outcomes, like how more often are we winning? So we did 2 things. We looked at the before picture as best we can by looking at all of the information we had and doing, assessments of the bespoke tools we talked about to understand what was the win rate prior to the system. So that was a before and after type look. What did it look like before? What did it look like after the system? We also look at not every deal, surprisingly, gets a solution engineer involved. And that's because either lack of knowledge from the sales rep, or the sales rep simply doesn't know that it's there. And so we can do a kind of an A/B comparison between those two processes today. So again, we both did a historical comparison, and we do a kind of a real-time comparison to come up with that win rate number. Great question.
Awesome. And so with 92 countries deployed, are there different languages within the tool?
Yeah, so great question. So certainly I think language comes into two flavors. One is the interface localized, right? And we do have localization. Mostly, I think for Oracle, because we're a US based US based company, most of our users just choose to use the English language interface. Now that being said, when we're working with customers, we do need to provide a language specific service. So it's a great question, because when we actually do require, when a sales rep makes a service request, they can actually specify which language they need the service delivered in. And again, that's typically with the customer. So, if you're in France and you're asking for a service request, even if the solution engineer is in a shared service center, we have a shared service center in Romania as well as one in India, we need to make sure that that engineer can operate in the French language. So yes, we do accommodate for language through our process, and actually as part of our kind of routing rules to make sure that we get the right engineer to the right service to the right customer. Great question.
Awesome. And kind of building off that, you mentioned localizations. Are there also tax considerations implemented to cater to the local markets and regions within the tools?
Yeah, interesting. We don't have any tax implications within our CRM system within Sales Cloud. All of our tax would be kind of associated to the CPQ system that we talked a little bit about in the quoting area. But yes, in that particular system, when we do quotes for customers and ultimately book and bill customers, we do provide full taxation capabilities and visibility to our customers. So we do account for that, but that's not so much within the sales and service engineer. That's more in the finance area.
Okay. And can sales reps and solution engineers exchange files within the applications?
Yeah. Our standard process asks the solution engineers and the sales reps to collaborate, using the opportunity object typically, and that allows for things like files to be uploaded, etc. So certainly the platform supports extra documentation that maybe not be included into the mainline flow, but what we try to do as much as we can, if the collaboration is a common type of collaboration, we actually want to embed it completely in the system. So we don't see a lot of file attachments at Oracle because of that, but it's certainly available.
Great. And do Oracle sales reps run their own campaigns, and is that supported, if so, in the system?
So not quite a CX service question, but it's a question I can certainly answer. So the reps are not encouraged to run their own campaigns here at Oracle. We actually have a very rich and capable sales programs team that not only designs the sales programs that actually come from the executives, but make sure that we help deploy those programs directly to the reps. And that doesn't mean that sales reps can't be contacting the customers in their territory, because we are a completely territory-driven sales process. But typically the programs come down and are filtered in through the sales process in the form of either leads or opportunities directly to the sales reps. Good question.
Awesome. And here's a good question. Do the solutions engineers or Oracle in general, do we receive feedback from the post-sales or implementations of the solutions within our systems, or how do we receive feedback?
We actually, I was going to include that in the future slide. We do not do that currently. We don't have a feedback loop where sales can provide, kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down type of thing on the service. it is something that has been asked for, and we're actually looking at doing that. We're trying to balance that between the other needs, like the knowledge management and the SE perspective, but that is on our roadmap. It's a great question. We do want to do that so that the solution engineers can understand, did the service get delivered properly? And ultimately, of course, we can help to use that to do analytics to help drive better service-based outputs or outcomes. Great
Yeah,
question.
that would be really cool. And so that's the last question that we have in the Q&A at the moment. So if there are no more questions from anyone, we'll go ahead and give everybody a couple minutes back in their day. And Paul, if you could move to the next slide. So thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully you got all your questions answered. If you have additional questions for Paul or for anyone at Oracle, really, you can reach out to the email address on this screen, oracle@contact_ww@oracle.com. More importantly, we have been recording this webinar and the replay will be available within 48 hours on Oracle Video Hub. You'll receive a follow-up email shortly after this with instructions for how to access the replay and view other upcoming Oracle at Oracle webinars. And it will also include a PDF of this presentation for your use. So thank you all for joining, and we hope to see you virtually on future Oracle at Oracle webinars. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.